and I'll introduce you. I'm just going to wait. It's 6 o'clock for me. It's 3 o'clock over by you. But we may as well just start.
Okay.
So I'm just going to allow the first minute or so is just attendees popping in, and they're coming in. And then I'll introduce the series, introduce you, and then we'll get going.
And it's a good theme, and I can tell you how I was upset about being considered countercultural. and I came to another understanding.
I think being called counterculture is like the best possible thing, but that's just me. Okay, so people are still popping in.
It is. It's great. It's great. I did go through some mental things.
I mean, it's also like your historical link to the counterculture is like, it's epic. I mean, it really can't be overstated. I don't think I'll be able to overstate it tonight, but so welcome everybody. Just everyone's still popping in, so actually takes a minute or so for people to pop in and have a virtual seat at the table. Just give it a few more seconds.
Yeah.
Grab your popcorn. Yeah. Gotta stay hydrated. Okay, I'm gonna get started. Hello. Let me make sure I'm just recording. That's another. Yes, we are recording. Okay, great. Hello and welcome to the sixth and the final talk of the fall 2022 Sara Turnbull Visiting Designer Speaker Series. This semester, we focused on cross-cultural design, looking at how artists and designers respond to different worldviews or bodies of knowledge. Tonight, we're going to look at what happens when cultures mix, and how do we best harness this dialogue between different cultures. And we're also going to ask what is a counterculture and who's in the counterculture, and how the counterculture has shaped American life today. Again, this series is running concurrently with Abya Yala, Structural Origins, the current exhibition in the Lehman College Art Gallery, which is this semester's participating in the New York Latin American Art Triennial. This is where this concept of cross-cultural discussion really originated from. This exhibition opened on the 21st of September, and it's going to conclude on January 28th. Also, one other thing, this lecture series is a component of a design course running right now, tonight, run by Professor Sean Cheng. He's also here. I can see him. I see his name. I see him virtually. These students are with us tonight, and they're going to be interacting with us, hopefully, through the Q&A. And of course, as always, this series is open to the public, so anyone is welcome to ask any questions in the Q&A, which you'll find right at the bottom of your screen. It's right next to the chat. It's different than the chat. It's where you can just pose a question, and then while we're talking, I might throw it at our guest and see where it leads us. Our guest tonight is Gayle Dickson, also known as Asali, who is the only woman graphic artist for the Black Panther Party newspaper between 1972 and 1974. At an early age, she began a pattern of drawing that was nurtured in the Oakland public schools. In 1966, she graduated from Fremont High School and attended Laney Community College, where she studied painting. A year later, she transferred to Merritt College, a hub for Black student political protest, and learned about African cultural heritage through African masks. While there, she also joined the Black Student Union and engaged in a protest against police brutality at the Housewives Market in downtown Oakland after the police assassinated Bobby Hutton. Dickson worked in the graphic arts department, where she met Emory Douglas, the Black Panthers Minister of Culture. And under his guidance, she integrated more political and social commentary into her artwork, which appeared on the back of the Intercommunal News Service. Her images, as you'll see tonight, often focus on women and children to critique capitalism and urban poverty. They also promoted the Black Panthers 10-point program, which we're hopefully going to talk about tonight as well, and the political campaigns of Elaine Brown and Bobby Seale. In 1974, she transferred to Oakland Community School and was responsible for designing the letterhead, teaching preschool art classes, and administrative duties. After suffering injuries in a car accident and experiencing burnout from the party, she left the Black Panthers in 1976. Since then, she's graduated from Holy Names University in Oakland with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. And she's worked for the city of Berkeley as an office clerk and promoted to assistant analyst. And in 1994, she went into the ministry and enrolled at San Francisco Theological Seminary, graduating with a Master in Divinity in 1998. And after her ordination, she pastored the South Berkeley Community Church from 1998 to 2006, where she fused her art and preaching as a way to minister to people. She currently resides in Richmond, California, and she continues to paint, teach, and is a sought-after speaker in the Bay Area and now here in the Bronx. So thank you for joining us, Gayle. Welcome to the talk. And I was hoping you could kind of take us at first through some of the work you did with the Black Panthers, which I have here up on the screen.
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this part of your series. It's an honor and I appreciate it and full of gratitude. And now you want me to do what?
Well, I was hoping, I have her up on the screen. Yeah, I have her up on the screen. Okay. Some of the work that we've collected that you made for the Black Panthers Party newspaper. And I was hoping you could kind of take us through it, and then we can kind of talk about your experience working under Emory Douglas, working in the Panthers. But these first two images here, could you tell us about them? These two, I guess are they ads? One of them is like an ad for Bobby Seale for his mayoral campaign, right? Okay, so tell us about these and what you,
Okay, what you have to first understand, like you said, between 72 and 74, I drew for the back pages.
Yeah.
Though I joined the Black Panther Party in 1970, I joined in Seattle. And we had worked me and my husband, we had worked for a year in the free breakfast program. So 1969 to 70, and then 70 we joined. And up there, I, did the normal things. We had classes. We were out in the field selling the newspaper, collecting sickle cell donations. We were opening up a clinic. I was driving people to the prisons to visit their loved ones. I was beginning to learn photography. And, I did as needed. They needed me to work on the sign for the medical clinic, and that's what I did,
Yeah.
But in 1972, members from the various chapters all over the United States, we were called to converge in Oakland for what was known as Oakland, a Base of Operation campaign. And we were taking the voting that, we had been given the right to vote since 1868 and 1875 and again and again and again and again. And so we were constantly challenging and making it plainer and plainer and plainer. And so that's, of course, what everybody recognizes the civil rights struggle and the horrific things that happened down there just to register people to vote. Well, what happened was we brought it up here to the Bay Area, to Oakland, and we moved it to another level, whereas we were going to register folks, and we registered something like 10,000 people to vote, and Black folks to vote. And so we were registering people to vote so that they can vote for Bobby Seale for mayor and Elaine Brown for councilperson, so that we could take over the operation of the city of Oakland and make it work for all people, especially poor people. So my drawing between 72 and 74, that is their focus. They're advertising. They're doing two things. They're advertising, as you using your word, Bobby Seale for mayor, Elaine Brown for city council, and at the same time, or during that time, Ron Dellums was running for re-election to Congress. We got him elected to Congress, and Shirley Chisholm in 74 was running for president. So we were lifting them up, and it was like the drawings that we did, we basically were what can I say? We were lifting up the social conditions of the lack of a social safety net, and this is in conflict, like the little boy, you see the picture on his wall. It's in conflict with the big lie of the American dream that is propagandized into our heads over and over again. And many of us, including myself and my mother and family, believed was possible. All you had to do is get an education, according to my family. All you had to do is go to college and this would be possible, you know. And so it would point out the vision or the propaganda versus the reality, and electing Bobby Seale and Elaine Brown and our slate of people will not just help make that vision a reality, because that vision says in this system, but we were saying that we need to change the system completely.
Mm-hmm.
And the beginning would be for us to take control of the politics and administration, et cetera, of Oakland, to be a demonstration, a model for the rest of the United States, you know. Wow. And I think even one of your images lifts up John Lewis, who says voting is a non-violent way to bring about change. So we were just carrying on from the civil rights struggle, just take it to a higher level. That's all.
Interesting. So this is another.
This is reflective of the promise to give away 10,000 bags of grocery and during the campaign. And that was the promise, and that's what we did. We registered thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and we gave away 10,000 bags of grocery. We had a chicken in every bag, a real chicken, not a live chicken, but a real chicken in every bag. And now this is just a little art thing for me, because, you know, back in that day, we used clip art to put in. We cut the bag open and then we put the clip art in there, and that would be the to demonstrate the food that we were giving away. And I just think it's interesting. We've become so technologically advanced to the point we still call it clip art, but really click art now.
Yeah, click art. Anyway, that's just a little, well, this is it. So, could you?
That's
just a side note. You mentioned the children's breakfast program and the People's Free Food program. Could you just briefly, for everyone, just describe what those things are?
The free breakfast program for children?
Yeah. I mean, I know what it is, but I feel like it is important to really call it out for what it is and talk about it. And
okay, I'll do the best I can.
Sure.
But there was a saying. Let me see if I can find it. It was a saying that I really liked. With this woman, she was her name was Cecilia Arrington, and she made a comment that, let me see if I can find it. She made a very good comment. Oh yeah, she said that I don't see it right now. I'll try to rephrase it. I was trying to get it back. But it's like what the Black Panther Party did was we saw an issue, a problem, and we said, this is what children are going to school hungry.
Yeah.
And all they can think about is their empty stomachs at school. And for the majority of the time. And therefore, let's have a free breakfast program for children. And probably if I was a child coming up at that time, I would be going to that free breakfast program, because when I came up, I had food insecurity issues.
Yeah.
You know, even though I never went hungry, there was
Right.
always this hovering over me that we were going to not eat, and it's translated in me to several reoccurring dreams of me going to the store and with a magic wand getting food for my family to make sure my family and I had food enough to eat. So the free breakfast program gets started because we saw a need.
Yeah.
And
I mean, what I love about
that
what I love about you is you describe it and it's like you're so humble about it. But the truth is that feeding people that are hungry is like a really radical social justice initiative that the Panthers invented, and it did definitely it literally changed the world, because then lo and behold, like years later, the USDA and the federal government co-opted it and essentially enacted a law to make that permanent across the country, right? Which was then at that time just seen as just doing good business for just good old Democrats doing their thing in the 70s. But this was all lifted directly from the Panthers and the work that the Panthers did. And I think that has to be mentioned. And it's I see like a trend of this happening over the last, if we're talking about cross-cultural ties, I think these trends have been happening for 400 years, right? Since like 1619, that Black culture, African culture, and then African American culture has been co-opted in some way, sanitized, if you will, reappropriated. And I feel like a lot of what the Panthers did is now being reappropriated by the larger mainstream counterculture, if you will, which is in some ways that phrase doesn't really work because they're too, they're antithetical to each other. But I just think that's really interesting, and I just wanted to point. Yeah,
I understand.
It's a weird thing, but
before I go to this next screen, I wanted to add on to what you were saying. Yes, they did co-opt the free breakfast program and added a free lunch program and everything, but interesting for me, and of course we never got the credit, and a lot of people did not know that it's a direct one-to-one link from our free breakfast program to the government-run free breakfast program until the 50th anniversary in 2016 at the Oakland Museum in California. And one lady came up to me and said, "You guys, I didn't know that was you guys that instituted that, and you guys were doing ministry, but that we were not given the credit." But you need to know also that recently I spent about a year and a half being a substitute teacher, and I have a lot of friends who are teachers still. I have young friends who are still teachers, and what I've noticed in terms of the food quality. See, when we fixed the free breakfast for children, they at that time, which was norm and considered a good quality breakfast, there was bacon and eggs and sausages and pancakes and waffles and grits and whatever else you needed to feel comfort and nourished, and liquids to take. Now, the quality that I saw of the lunches was processed food, and even though it was culture specific, it was very processed. And even the kids ate half of it, and wasted most of it. And the breakfasts that I know of personally were now being paid out of the pockets of the teachers, and they were bringing little small tokens of breakfast. They might bring some bagels and cream cheese. They might bring some pastry, but nothing. And it's partially because it's coming out of their own pockets. It's not coming out of the school's budget. It's not coming out of the federal government's budget. And they're doing, they're getting paid way less than their value. and
Yep.
they're put upon extremely hard. So yeah, it got co-opted and then it got forgotten.
And then it got forgotten. Yeah. No, it's a good point. That's a good point. So tell us about these pieces here, these two works that you have here.
Well, the first one is basically, it's back then, because you can tell by the style of his clothes, but it's number one, it says, this is what, now I didn't personally witness this as a child growing up, but I know a lot of members did, and a lot of Black people did experience this. And now today we see it on TV. Yeah. And we saw it, thank God for Darnella Frazier. And it's just like, can't nobody deny it at all now, you know?
No.
And so this is Anytown, USA, back in the day before cell phones and videos, et cetera. But a person in the community witnessing what is the terror and the trauma and the brutality and of the state-sanctioned murder and brutalization of Black people and poor people by the police. You know, it's legal for them to be bullied and brutalized, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm trying to demonstrate his anger. And therefore, if you project past his anger, you can understand the riot. You can understand any effort that anybody makes to defend their community. You know. So that's that picture. On the second picture, this is my favorite. This is my favorite picture because it puts you right. It is historical. It's right in a particular historical time. Ron Dellums re-elect Ron Dellums. Elect Shirley Chisholm for president. And then of course, Bobby Seale for mayor and Elaine Brown for city council. And I don't know if people are familiar with this, but excuse me, we came 46, my understanding, I haven't verified it, but my understanding is that we garnered 46% of the vote, which is a huge.
That's
challenge.
huge.
Yes, especially back then. Yes. And then we, the Black Panther Party machinery was used to actually elect the first Black mayor of Oakland, who was Lionel Wilson. So that's my favorite because it gives you some good history, and it says vote for survival up on her cap. It's good, it's really history, and a lot of our schools are not even don't teach about Bobby Seale in Oakland, you're in New York. Don't teach about Elaine Brown because you're in New York. Don't teach, maybe Ron Dellums, since he was one of the first Black congressmen, but it's okay, so you don't teach Ron Dellums. But Shirley Chisholm, sure.
Yeah, definitely Shirley Chisholm,
Not only because she was not only a woman running for president, and a Black woman at that, and she was making so much sense. And her slogan, unbought and unbossed, that's saying something. Unbought, that's saying something today. That's saying something today. Because the 90% of the politicians can't hardly move because they're all paid off.
Yep.
You know,
I wonder,
paid off.
I have to wonder, like, what would happen? What would have been different if Shirley Chisholm had won the presidency? I mean, I don't know. I'd like to think it would be a wildly different country that we're living in, but I don't know. I guess it's an open question.
That's been placed. Yeah, you have a machinery that's in place, and she would be going up against that machinery, but she'd have the people behind her. So yeah, you're right. Yeah. I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, she would have. She moved the movement along, and I think being president might have moved it along even further. But so these two pieces. Tell us about these two pieces here. And I'm noticing something too. Sorry to interrupt. I'm noticing that each one of these pieces that you make, does adhere to one of the 10 or more of the 10 points from the Panther Party. It's like very on message. Nothing. It's not like these are wild protest pieces. These are really on message with the 10-point plan of the Panthers. And I have to wonder like how much of the messaging was really committee driven, like really driven as a group, sort of and adhered to. Could you comment on that, like just the messaging of all these things?
Yeah, you said some on message. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like
the word.
On message, like nothing. All of these pieces sort of really they're very focused on the 10 points and like the principles of the Panthers, right? There's nothing really that ever deviates outside of them. And the principles, just so people know, they can Google them. It's not a mystery, but they're very basic things. And many of them are technically enshrined in the Constitution. And as you mentioned before, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, right? The Reconstruction Amendment, like the right to vote, right? The right that all people have equal protection under the law. These basic principles that they were so elusive that we had to fight a civil war and then put them into the Constitution 100 years later, right? Here's the Panthers fighting over and over again, right? And here's the Panthers 100 years later still just saying, here are the things we want: basic survival, freedom from oppression from the police, and basic things. And
lift up
things you can't argue with, right? And every one of these pieces just very humbly reiterates that. And I was wondering if when you and the people that ran the paper, that ran the artwork for the paper, when you guys are talking about these things, were you really focused on the message? Like, who sort of like steered that so that it was so cohesive and consistent?
Oh, well, that's interesting. Because you're asking me to really work my memory back there. But
it's okay. You can pass. It's fine.
I'll tell you what. I know for a fact that Emory was part of the central cadre,
Emory Douglas,
and
yeah.
Central, Emory Douglas, and he ran the art department. But we also function, so therefore we're lifting up the voting and how it's connected to points number 1 and number 10, and of 1 through 10, but these two in particular are connected to points number 1 and number 10. Not that we said, oh, this is going to be number 1 and this is going to be number 10. No, not like that. It's just that the 10-point platform and program is in every newspaper issue. We put it out there to the community. Where there, however, the themes and the headlines for the that particular issue are decided, I am personally not privy to, but obviously there is a cadre that is making these decisions. We function as a cadre within the graphic arts department. And so these ideas would be brought back to us and we would hash them and deal with them. And if it was my turn to come up with the drawing, then I would look through drawings and pictures and photographs and magazines, and you can see, like in the picture with the lady with the hair rollers, a lot of those people in the background, they're from photos that we took during the food giveaway. And and we try to depict everyday people, and we would work together as a team to put together whatever. I don't know if I ever came up with the words
Yeah.
But I probably can contributed to the conversation, you know. So that's the best I can tell you on that.
I think that's a good
And
answer, because it's a good answer, because I think it speaks to the idea of collaboration amongst designers. And I think that that's something that, you know, I know in my classes, and I'm sure in Professor Chang's classes, he's here tonight with his students, that's a big deal, like collaborating. Like no one person has all the answers, and in a design team, like you can't really expect to do that. The thing about I've noticed about design that's very similar, I think, to the social justice movement is that it sort of is lacking a hierarchy, right? Like hierarchy doesn't, it's a really good thing in visual design to have hierarchy, right? But in terms of like the team structure, it should be kind of a fluid thing and more of a flat sort of structure where everybody has a stake in it. I mean, that's my philosophy. I don't know if, you know, I don't know how, you know. Oh, yes, these two pieces, I was wondering, these are very interesting, especially the Bobby Seale piece, the mayoral vote. Can you talk about these a little bit?
Okay, well, you said these are interesting. Why do you think that was? Why do you say that particular one is interesting?
Well, this I think it's interesting because well, for me, it's like the white space. It's the negative space, like the blank area in it. It's very striking. It's almost it's striking to me in its simplicity and its directness. It has a very strong, very direct message, and I find that really fascinating. I just find it just really struck me. That's the best. I don't know. That's the best I can do. Yeah.
This, you can tell the different, like that's straight out of my head. However we dealt with the concept,
yeah,
that's what I came up with.
It's great.
And the little baby, he's a little cartoon. But as far as, you know, composition, how to communicate an idea, I think I just had to let the spirit move me. You know, I can't tell you any more on that. When I looked at this, and I was like, "Oh, look, I got kind of detail down there on the city and
it's
and
great.
Everything."
I think it really distills. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, I was just gonna say sometimes I look at some of the stuff that I've done and I'm like, "Ooh, I did that."
Yeah.
You know.
But these are great. And this one on the right with the grocery bill. I mean, it's interesting because this is really it's really sadly applicable to today, right? With the way the nation is. And so I think here's the thing that I think is really interesting about your work, though, now that we've sort of seen a full breadth of it. I think, well, when I thought about the Panthers before I met you, I was thinking here is a really powerful but mostly male-dominated counterculture group from the 60s that had simpatico, that had parallels to other social justice movements in the 60s, and of course they all sort of collaborated, and this culminated in the Chicago 7 trial and all this stuff. Like that's how I know of the Panthers, right? That's my sort of education about them. And being male dominated, like it had like an aggressive stance. Like when you see pictures of the Panthers, if you were just Google it, you'd see a bunch of dudes in black turtlenecks with rifles, right? That's the consensus view as far as Google is concerned, and maybe some history books. But the reality is much, much more complex and deeper and richer. The reality is that some of the most amazing things that the Panthers did were things like the Free Breakfast for Children program, or the community, like the free clinics, right? Providing healthcare for people that couldn't afford it. Things that are now enshrined in very progressive law, you know, from the last 40 years or so, right? You can almost, I mean, if you pack it all together, it's all like the ACA, what the USDA has done with SNAP and WIC assistance, food stamps, et cetera. All this stuff is kind of like a new deal in a way, almost. It's like a protracted New Deal, right? it's amazing stuff that the Panthers just kind of did, because as you said, they found a gap that needed to be filled, right? And it's the essence of what it means to be American, is to do that. But it's seen as like male dominated. And I think that was my view. And then here's your work, and it's all just like referencing women, right? Women with rollers, and women on the street, just, you know, women collecting groceries, women with babies, their mothers with children. It's a very different vibe, right? And I feel like I can't help but think that some of that has to do with the fact that you were the only woman working in this graphic arts department for the Black Panthers. It's just like an interesting thing. And that's what I thought was interesting, is that you're kind of like, the Black Panthers were a counterculture movement, and here you are, a sort of counterculture for that culture, right? And you're shifting focus to the people who are really affected by poverty and police brutality and over policing of neighborhoods, women and children, right? The food insecurity. Who does that really affect? It's women and children, right? And you kind of like came correct about that, and you made the Black Panthers focus on that in their work, and I just think that's really amazing. And I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Yeah, I'll comment on it. I have a couple of comments on that.
Sure,
First of all, the image, like you said, you Google and you get this image, and you get whatever the propaganda is to make you be afraid, especially if you're a white man, to be afraid.
That's right.
What's not included in the images that you Google, and I know you brought that up because you're juxtaposing male dominance versus my female dominance. But I just want to just make this one
exactly
point.
Right. Yeah.
And that is that California at that time was an open carry state. Okay, it was legal, and a good documentary to watch is the documentary on Merritt College, produced by the Peralta School District. So it was an open carry state, and what Huey and the Black Panther Party was doing was a survival program of self-defense. They were defending the community against that picture where you saw the young man watching somebody get beat up. That one, yeah. So that's what's missing in the Google, unless maybe you can read and it gets in there. And so, yeah, that's the image that you get, and it's unfortunate that it's not tied to put in context. Okay. Now, in terms of me drawing mostly women and children, and I drew mostly women and children. This is not a conscious decision of me. I'm not like, oh, I am the only woman in the Black Panther Party at this time drawing images. Let me draw images of women and children. No. What that is about, and it's taken me a while to really process it and understand, but you have to understand, not you, but what I came to understand is that it's connected to my growing up, my worldview growing up. I grew up in not poverty, but we weren't middle class, we were poor. And I grew up in my, I guess those the formative years when you're in elementary school, in segregation. Now, I didn't grow up in the segregation of West Oakland, where it's a huge community of Black folks. But the segregation was still the norm in North Oakland, excuse me. And maybe they were starting to open up North Oakland to Black people, but it was still the norm on the block that I lived on. And the block that I lived on, it was 40th Street in North Oakland. and there was a school and a church on one side of the block, and there was a lot of apartment complexes and maybe one or two houses with businesses on the corner. And in the middle of that block was all the Black families. And we all knew, the adults knew, the children knew, even the white kids that came into the middle of the block to play with us, we all knew that colored folks were not allowed in those houses or those houses, to the left or to the right. And when I stop and really think about it in present day, not back then, all the apartment houses were occupied by single women, Black women, raising their children. The only couple that I knew was an older couple with no children, lived across the hall from us, but living with them was their niece and her child. She was a single parent, and she was a young single parent, because she almost played with us, but she was a young single parent. And so my worldview is women, and women raising children and taking care of children. And even when we finally moved to East Oakland, my mother finally is able to scrape up enough money, and with my sister's help, we get a house out in East Oakland, because now East Oakland is starting to open up, or it's opening up more. I'm not sure exactly when it began, its opening up process, but it's starting to open up. And we move into our home, and our white neighbors immediately, they don't speak to me. I don't know if my mother even spoke to them, but I know when I've come outside and say, hello, how are you? They turn their head, they walk in the house, or they ignore me, and then within weeks, they're gone. And the block, the community is African American, and it's very mixed in terms of single and married couples. But in the block that I live on, the side of the block that I live on 79th Avenue in East Oakland, is predominantly single women raising children. So that's my worldview.
Yeah.
And my the 40th Street experience is the experience of, like I said, food insecurity. And I'm familiar with 3 and 4 families living in one house or one apartment, you know, and or one apartment was used as a way station for people migrating from the South through Southern California up to Oakland. And then when an apartment became vacant, they move into that apartment. So that's my worldview. And so whether it's not conscious, so I'm unconsciously drawing these things. My drawings are subconsciously reporting on the most oppressed class, or group of people, you know, even in the Black community, which is women and children.
Yeah,
it was not a conscious thing.
Yeah, I was doing a little research, and I found these works by Romar Bearden, or Romary, depending on, sometimes he called himself that. But so here's an African American artist in the fine arts world, right? Like really firmly in the fine arts, gallery representation, soon to have like career retrospectives and whatnot. And he's sort of doing this too, like he's referencing not just women of color and women and children, but he's also referencing sort of Afro-Caribbean color schemes and motifs, just but I think it's really interesting because this is right around the time you're working, and he's also doing, in a different context, he's working with collage and cut ups and things. And I just think it's really fascinating. And if you put your work and his side by side, you kind of see this interesting, it's almost like an interesting dialogue happening, but it's East Coast, West Coast, probably completely isolated. But I think it's interesting that here's an artist doing something in the fine arts realm. You're kind of doing something in the graphic arts realm, right, with an eye towards activism. And there's just these two extremes, like these two different worlds sort of colliding. I just think it's fascinating. I wanted to talk about some of the what's happened since the 60s and 70s counterculture movement, and how I think there's this interesting thing happening where images of the counterculture in the 60s and 70s have been co-opted by the mainstream, right? So here's this artist, this is Shepard Fairey, very famous graphic designer and visual artist, plenty of gallery representation, went to RISD, he's like a very well-known, he even did the official portrait for Barack Obama that was at one point in the National Gallery. And he's also an activist. And here's just a smattering of some of his work that directly references both the civil rights movement and the Black Panthers and Angela Davis and a lot of the things that were happening that you were literally a part of, like working in. And I was wondering if I could get he's a really amazing designer, no question about it. But I was wondering if I could get your opinion on the idea of a very well-paid, very well-known white artist making work that references the Black and African-American counterculture of the 60s and 70s. Like, where are your thoughts on that? Mm-hmm. And how like as a what? Yeah. Sorry, I'll let you answer, and I have some follow-ups, but yeah.
No, I understand, and I'll take you on a little history trip first, because I was looking up. I think you have a woodcut of Aaron Douglas in there.
Yes, I do. Yeah,
Emperor
Jones. Emperor Jones. Yes.
Emperor Jones.
Yeah.
And so I looked that up, and interesting because the movie is about it was by Eugene O'Neill, I believe.
Yeah.
It is. And it gets a lot of success, and he wins an award, and it's on Broadway, whatever. It's on stage and blah, blah, blah. And I was reading one of the comments about it, and what interestingly is that the same thing, the same question, the same, I don't know, you have to come up with the word, is going on back then. That's during the Harlem Renaissance.
Interesting.
And the Black artists, so of course, the white world is just, they rave about the film, how well it's done, the composition, the artistic quality. And Aaron Douglas is asked to draw these, not draw, but to make these
the prints,
to illustrate, and there's 4 of them, to illustrate the play, the Emperor Jones, and he's getting paid. He does it totally in African style, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the commentaries that comes back or the criticism from the Black artists themselves is twofold. One, doggone it, the white person making the money off of it, and his portrayal is recognized as authentic. And then you have the other side that says, well, got employment, Black actors, and it's making money for them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. you know, so there's this tug, this division that continues to happen even today. And I don't know, I'm unfortunately, I'm not familiar with this artist, except that you said he did Obama's portrait, so I'm familiar that way. I haven't like followed his work or anything like that. It's very much in the style of, I guess, what a lot of those artists do, that poster style, Emory Douglas and that poster. And he's making bank off of our culture, and you can see our culture, meaning third world, and the struggle for freedom, and that's good to lift it up, you know. I don't know how much credit he gives. Like there's there's how does he acknowledge the reason why he goes there and where it comes from, and his feelings that are related to it? How does he acknowledge it? I don't know. So I can't really say on that. And I'm caught. I am of two sides also, you know, because the flip side says, get that revolutionary thinking out there and keep it out there, and so that eventually that becomes the norm. You know, so I haven't taken a stand. You either take a yes stand or a no stand, and you can't straddle the fence. And I have to let this think and process through a little bit longer.
I guess, you know, for me, it's like we can move on, but I feel that there's this struggle there's this desire to be an ally to these various causes, but then to not, and if you're going to be imitative of some of the style, it's like you said, you really do have to give credit somehow. And it's, you know, it's just an interesting, because I feel like this dialogue is critical, like the visual dialogue has to happen. And images that were at one time considered counterculture, it's a huge coup that they're now mainstream. I feel like that's a good thing in many ways, but when you see it like on a t-shirt in the mall, you know, it's just like there's a point where it looks like it maybe went too far and now it's commercialized. And that's, I don't know, there's like this weird spectrum that all these things are on for me.
And and I would love to get into further discussion with other artists, you know, to talk, because there are white, I just got her name, Barbara Right, I think. Yeah. Okay. She, I mean, you know, she's just as radical as some of these others that he's lifting up there, you know, and how, I know I'm not going to articulate this right or very well, and I apologize for that.
That's okay.
But it's like, how do you talk to your community? You know, how do you talk to the white community to make them allies? To help them be allies. So
it's tough.
We have to put it right now.
It's tough, especially in my town. Anyway, so let's this is a whole other lecture series. How do you talk to white people? Here's the thing. So the good thing is that I do see echoes of your work and the work of the Panthers in what's happening now in modern day contemporary social movements like Black Lives Matter. This is the Black Lives Matter mural, which was in Foley Square, right around Wall Street area. City Hall's kind of near here. And it's interesting because this is obviously a bird's eye view, right? From, I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet or something like that. But here's some close-up views, and you can see that different artists actually work on different letters. So this is TJ Muhammad. He's actually from Ghana, and he used Kente cloth designs in his work, and what they were called Adinkra symbols, which represent concepts like royalty, unity, legacy. So here's an artist he's emigrated here from Ghana, and he's bringing Ghanaian culture to the US and engaging in this countercultural and this cross-cultural conversation that's going on right now in regards to race relations, which I just think is really interesting, because this idea of cross-cultural discussion is in design is happening in the realm of activism, like literally under our feet, right? It's like this interesting thing that's happening. So and this is interesting too. So this, I think, was this is the I in Lives, and this is by Sophia Dawson, and a Brooklyn-based artist, and she's using and directly lifting from Emory Douglas and other Black Panther artists such as yourself and then of course the Black Power salute, the fist of solidarity that's been co-opted by socialist movements all over the world, right? So so there's another example of, and that's a good thing, right? That's a really good thing until it's on a t-shirt sold at Urban Outfitters, and then it possibly is a bad thing. But here it's a really good thing, right? That's my point, is that this is a beautiful mural, a little piece of a larger mural that I just think is interesting. This is this S, for example, carries passages from the Bible, right? Which, is a very large part of the Black community, both in New York and on the West Coast. So I think that's really interesting. This is a similar street-wide mural that was done on Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard in Harlem. It was curated by Lerone Wilson, but it too has a bunch of artists involved in it. Here's just the word Black, for example, has ancient Egyptian symbols in it. Different references to pop art. Again, the Black Power salute. This is Thomas Heath. He did the M and the A in Matters. I just think this is really interesting, because here is the contemporary movement for social justice and survival, protection against police brutality, all the different points of the Black Panthers come to fruition. Now it's like common currency. They're talking about it on the news. It's in publicly funded murals. These are amazing things, right? So, I mean, it's like you were saying, we can sit here and critique Shepard Fairey. We're never going to be able to afford him to come defend himself. He's too expensive. But if he was here, I'm sure he would be, not to speak for him, he would agree with us that ultimately these are really good things, because they're furthering the movement, right? That's what great art does. So I tend to agree with you. At first, when I'm looking at these things, I'm taken aback. It kind of frustrates me, but and that's fine. It's okay to feel that way. But I think you're right that if it's furthering the movement, it's valuable and it's valid, and it should be sort of celebrated as these images are here. So let's just finish up. Tell us about what you're working on now.
Well, before we go to that, can I make a little comment on that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because all art, I believe, all art forms are important to lift up. They lift up the consciousness, and they lift up change to a more loving, and hopefully to a more loving and humane society. And they're important to society and in general, and should be honored, and they counter the big lie, and they should be honored and not demonized or ignored. But just looking at, and this is just me and my personal thoughts and opinion right now at this moment, and just looking at the large murals, and like you said, they incorporated the African motifs, and they incorporated scripture, Emory Douglas's artwork, et cetera, et cetera. So what I think is very interesting about that, which I love, is that you had the Harlem Renaissance.
Yep.
And even before that, the spirituals and the quilts. You had them expressing freedom through that medium, and of course the spirituals become very classical,
Yeah,
and the quilts become art pieces that hang on the wall instead of covering us up to protect us and keep us warm.
that's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
The Harlem Renaissance was about African American artists being distinct and who we were and individuals and taking styles from wherever. And this is, I'm not speaking as an art historian, I'm speaking as someone who's just from my own personal reading and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But self-expression and expressing themselves without like approval from the dominant culture or approval from white culture. And so then that same explosion happens on the West Coast, and that explosion that happens on the West Coast flips me 180 degrees, because I am all in assimilation mode. Even though I'm growing up in this situation, I'm still being infused with the propaganda that says, you may be growing up like this. This is what you're supposed to aspire to. And help keep capitalism alive and help keep the system moving, become a manager of the system. But in between 66 and 69, my naivety and my lack of awareness gets turned 180 degrees, and it's because of the art.
Yeah.
It's because of the art. It shakes me awake, and it highlights the value of all art forms to human society. And so what I see happening when you're showing me these murals, that I see that same thing. We're probably moving towards critical mass. It's education. We're pulling on all parts of our culture, and if someone imitates it, great. But we're pulling on our history and our culture, and the church is part of our culture. I incorporate scripture in part of and my thinking in some of my, I didn't give you any of those, but in some of my drawings and paintings, and they so we are asserting ourselves once again, and it looks like it's moving towards what we had in the Harlem Renaissance. It's moving towards what we in the 60s, and now we're probably due, and we are due for another
I agree.
art explosion.
Agreed.
Like this is what this is heading towards, and praise the Lord, thank God.
Yeah, I hope all the students are listening, because that's really a really good point, is that the movement is due to happen, right? And it's looking for students, it's looking for young people of color with a fresh perspective, a different voice. And it's an, they're going to be beating down the doors for our students and Black and brown artists around the country. And they already are. It's
please.
It's already happening.
Art crosses boundaries.
Yeah.
Art speaks a language that crosses boundaries. I don't need to speak French to communicate with my art. I don't need to speak Ghanaian to communicate with my art. It communicates, it crosses boundaries and borders. And that's the beauty. You can't contain it. It cannot be contained.
That's right.
You can't hide it. Once it's out there, you can't hide it from somebody. It's out there, and it communicates to everybody. And that's what art is, what helps push society forward.
So unfortunately, we're out of time. I don't know but I did want to rest on this very last image. Could you just tell us about this piece and sort of where you're headed as an artist now here in 2022?
Okay, this is kind of new for me. I'm kind of playing with a new style. Yeah. And this particular, it's obviously new compared to, right? But this particular image, which I think I told you earlier, is not a good reproduction of it, but it's kind of faded. But at any rate, this particular image It just revealed itself to me. I have no idea. I have to stare at it and listen and see what the message is she or he is trying to give me, you know. But this message, everybody assumes it's a she, but I couldn't figure out whether it was a she or a he. And this person, the spirit just came out of these colors, and I just pulled it out. So there she was, or there he was.
Wow.
It's
like a totally different vibe, I feel, than the work that you before.
And I think it's moving. I like to think that it's moving in the direction, basically, where we jumped off and moved to the Black Panther Party when we left the Civil Rights Movement. We moved into, it's not a civil issue, it's a human issue. And the human issue takes us into a spiritual realm. It takes us into my eye. It takes us into justice. It takes us into order. It takes us into balance and humanity and love and caring and hospitality.
Wow, that's awesome. This is great. Let's leave it there. I mean, I can't think of a better way to end. This is really beautiful. Thank you so much for meeting with us tonight, Gayle, and thanks everybody for coming. I have to say, I didn't mention this at the very beginning, but I did mention this to you in private, that it's a huge honor to speak to you and to talk about your history and your work. A huge honor. So thank you so much for giving us that time. I also, this is the last lecture in the series. I just want to thank the Turnbull Foundation and Dorothy, who's helped connect us with the Turnbull Foundation. She is the Turnbull Foundation as far as I'm concerned. So thank you so much for sponsoring this and letting us have this great series. And thanks to everybody for coming. And thank you again, Gayle. And please, I know you're on the West Coast, so you're still like in the afternoon, but have a good night and enjoy.
Thank you. And it's been an honor and a pleasure for me to be here as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
And I apologize for truncating the Q&A.
No. It was totally fine. I think the thing is that the Q&A was meaningless because you answered all the questions that we could possibly, you just did it naturally. So thanks again. All right. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a good night.